Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Winter Cogongrass Identification, Monitoring, and Management. We're going to give folks a minute or so to come in from the waiting room. But while that's taking place, just wanted to start with some introductions. My name is Karen Zillox-Brown. I'm the Resource Specialist for the Longleaf Alliance. I'm joined here with Jacob Barrett, Technical Assistance and Training Specialist, also with the Longleaf Alliance. Jacob will be here to help moderate the Q&A portion of the webinar. So we'd love to take your questions as we hear from these two speakers. Please use that Q&A function to type those in, and we can address those towards the end of the session. If you have other things you want to include, like an introduction, the chat area would be a great place to do that. The session is being recorded, so it will be available for on-demand viewing later on this week, usually a couple days after this live session. So just check back on the webinar portal. It will live there once we have that all set. Today, we're really happy to have a talk from a couple of folks from Florida and Georgia that deal with the very invasive species of Cogongrass in their own respective states and in their own respective programs. First, we have the Longleaf Alliance's Emma McKee. She is the invasive species coordinator. Emma works with all invasive plants, but has a focus on Cogongrass in the Florida Panhandle and southern Alabama counties. And after Emma's talk for part 2, we'll be hearing from Chris Barnes, a forest health specialist with Georgia Forestry Commission. He works across the state of Georgia. He's been with the commission for 24 years. So he'll be following up. We'll get to his part in the second half of the webinar. Just a couple of announcements. If you are seeking continuing education credits, we do have one SAF hour awarded for this webinar, so give you a couple instructions at the end for how to be sure that you get those credits. So Emma, if you're ready to kind of queue up your presentation, I'll stop my screen and allow you to share. This is kind of the clunky part of handing things off, but give you a second to get that going. Yeah, in the meantime, all of you tuning in, if you want to just type in your introductions into the chat box. It's always neat to see who else is here and where everybody hails from.
Hey everyone, like Karen said, my name is Emma McKee. And today I'm going to be talking about Cogongrass during dormant season. I will discuss its physical appearance, the treatment options, and the watchouts. For the southeast, where majority of the Cogongrass is located, fall and wintertime is not only known as the dormant season, but it's also known as burn season. So I will also be touching on how Cogongrass is influenced and affects fire behavior. So let's start off with the simple question, what is Cogongrass? So a little species overview, it's a warm season perennial grass. It's considered one of the most horrible invasive species in the world. It's established in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, and strangely enough, Oregon. And there has been recent data showing that is establishing in Connecticut as well. It was first accidentally introduced in 1912, and then it was purposely brought over in the 20s and 30s. It was used as a forage crop and erosion control. Well, the forage crop did not work because nothing likes to eat it. It has a high silica content. And this is just a very short description and small snippet of the history so that you can kind of understand that it came from overseas. Biggest thing is there are actually kind of two different types of Cogongrass. The biggest differences are the ones that come from Japan and the ones that come from the Philippines. So the ones that come from Japan which is commonly known as Japanese bloodgrass. It is still found to be sold in a lot of nurseries who are claiming it to be sterile. And even though if the seeds are sterile, it spreads by rhizomes as well. So keep that in mind if you're at a nursery and you see Japanese bloodgrass. And it's called that because it has a more purpley red color on the leaf blade. In the photo at the top right corner, you can see that it has that really pretty purple shade, and that's why people really like it. And it's got more of a droopy leaf blade, and it's a little bit softer to the touch. It's not as coarse as the Philippine, which is up here on the left. It's got more of a sword shape. It's a lot straighter, and it has a very, very distinctive sandpaper serrated edge. Both are equally invasive. There's the only differences is just mostly the coloring and a little bit of the shape. Treatments are still the same, everything like that. Just like to make people aware that there are some that come with a bit of a purpley reddish tone, and it's not just straight green. So a little bit more on the identification, because it can be tricky. You can tell Cogongrass apart from other weeds in one of three ways. So that is by its flower, its leaf, or its rhizome. So its flower is in the picture on the right, the rhizome is on the left. And the rhizome is just a underground root where the flower and the leaf blade will extend from. So don't get that confused. So this is the root, that little scraggly thing, and then that's the rhizome. The rhizomes are really sharp. They penetrate through different roots and trees and anything else. It'll break your skin. It's very, very sharp. Cogongrass typically flowers in late April and through the month of May, but mowing or chemical use can influence flowering. So or also weather. Here in the Panhandle of Florida, we have a few infestations where it'll flower anytime there's a dramatic change in weather. So if it goes from 70 degrees to 90 degrees, it flowers. If it goes from 50 degrees to 30 degrees, it flowers. It's very strange. But typically you'll only see it flowering in the spring. You can identify it by its unique offset mid-rib vein, but I like to note that there are multiple native grass species that have that same identification. So it's important to remember what the seed plume looks like and these rhizomes. A little bit more on the identification. So I know I touched a little bit on how there are native species that look alike. I just want to give a few of them a shout. So yellow Indian grass is the #1 most misidentified Cogongrass grass species. The biggest way to differentiate the differences between the two is the seed heads. The only issue with that is that's very seasonal dependent. But even if you do dig up the rhizomes to try and look and see if that Cogongrass or Indian grass has that rhizome, they look very, very similar. So if you are unsure of your identification, take as many detailed photos as you can, GPS the location, and contact a forester or extension officer or myself for any kind of professional in this field for secondary identification. Always get 100% yes, this is Cogongrass before treatment begins, because the last thing you want to do is take away the native grasses. A couple others that are worth mentioning is broom sedge, switchgrass, and slender wood oats. Those are some of the most common ones I see people misidentifying as Cogongrass. And as you can see in these photos, it grows pretty much anywhere that's sunny and not completely wet. So even here, it's on the beach, but it's not in standing water. So Cogongrass will grow in anywhere that's not standing water or deep shade areas. So see, it comes all the way up to that wood line and then it stops. But it loves open fields, right of ways, those kind of areas. So a little bit into the dormant look. So these photos were taken in October, February, and early March. In Florida, last year, we had a late winter season freeze, which prolonged the average dormancy for Cogongrass. So like what I was saying earlier, how the seeding can be influenced by mowing, weather, or herbicide control. And so looking at these photos, you can see that it goes from a bright lush green color to a light white tan to brown color. The dormant season for Cogongrass is late fall to early spring, typically November to March. However, this can vary by a month depending on where you are in the Southeast or how cold of a winter. Obviously, if you're in Oregon, these things are going to be a little bit different. It gets colder there much faster. The two photos on the right are a great comparison on how the Philippine Cogongrass versus the Japanese Cogongrass looks like. So the one in the middle is the more Philippine type. You can see it's standing a lot more straight up. And then on the right is the Japanese where it's more drooped down. And a little bit of a question where in this middle photo, you can see that there's still green in there. And this photo was taken in March. So it's coming out of dormant season. And a lot of people think, oh, it's turning green, I can treat it immediately. That's not the case. You have to be patient with this plant, otherwise you'll build the resistance. So why is Cogongrass going into dormant season, right? It's because it's saving all of its energy to reproduce as much as possible in the springtime. And with that energy, you want it to be carrying all the herbicide in the proper locations of the plant. So if the plant is still coming out of dormant season and it's starting to look green, but still has brown blades, you would want to wait until after it's flowered to begin any kind of treatment. That way, it's bringing all of its energy down into the rhizomes. Now, why would that matter? This plant is very, very funny in the way that it likes to grow. So 70% of it is actually underground in those tightly knit rhizomes. That's where most of its life is. So you want all of that herbicide to be carried into where majority of the plant is and where most of its reproduction capabilities take place. So that's not necessarily to say you can't spray it when it's flowering, but it won't be as effective, and you're increasing your high risk of spreading. It doesn't take much for this species to spread. The flowers are pretty highly reproductive. Biggest thing is not cutting into the rhizomes. There are a lot of people who like to mow this grass and then spray it and then mow it. That is not recommended. You like to have a nice 12-foot height before treating this. That's just, again, to have the herbicide being carried on where the plant is telling itself where it needs to grow. So if you damage it, it's thinking, oh, I need to grow up. Rather than if you keep it at its preferred height, it'll send all of its energy down into its rhizomes. And so I would want to go into a little bit on fire versus Cogongrass. So one of the main reasons Cogongrass is number 7 on the federal noxious weed list is due to its major wildfire risk. On the picture here on the right is actually someone laying fire down right next to a Cogongrass patch. It's a very small area and we have a lot of personnel and we have it as a watch out. So, but Cogongrass and fire, it's a funny thing. If you are an experienced prescribed burner here in the Southeast, then you know that many, if not all, of our native grasses prefer to be burned and thrive after. Well, that's the same case for Cogongrass as well. So fire is not a way to eradicate nor control Cogongrass. That's very important to know. Fire is not a way to control or eradicate Cogongrass. The only benefit to burning Cogongrass is decreasing the thatch density to increase your herbicide application's successful effectiveness. Burning Cogongrass encourages healthier and stronger growth and provides substantial nutrients that this plant doesn't even need, but definitely loves. Now that we have discussed a bit background, let's get into what you may see when burning Cogongrass and what you can't see. So Cogongrass has a very high silica content. Remember back when I said it was a really poor forage crop because of its high silica content? Well, nothing eats it. Well, fire eats it. Fire loves the silica content in this grass. It gives that high flammability rate. Once ignited, you will begin to see the fire grow, and heat intensity is that of a 100-hour log. Scientists have yet been able to calculate the exact max heat temperature Cogongrass puts off when on fire due to it melting any device that comes near it. But the highest point recorded is 700 degrees Fahrenheit. For reference, fire burns at about 450 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is a very hot grass. The heat intensity alone can and will cause substantial damage, especially if it is a slow backing fire where the heat is sitting on other plant species with a lower heat tolerance, causing root and trunk damages. The heat is not the only thing to be concerned of, though. Cogongrass, when burning, has a double flame height, which means if it's 5 foot tall, you're looking at 10-foot flames at least 700 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's the minimum, so it could be higher than that. And if you thought that wasn't bad enough, there's more. Cogongrass has one more trick up its scaly sleeve that you can't necessarily see, and that it's allelopathic defense mechanism. Say that one more time. Allelopathic defense mechanism. This is a way for Cogongrass to deter out and compete other plant species, and why you typically see it in such a dense monoculture. It seeps a hormone-like chemical into the soil that the other plant species, especially our natives, cannot germinate in. So when Cogongrass is on fire, that same chemical is released through the smoke, turning the smoke a dark black color. If this smoke hits any trees, all the leaves will brown and the trunks will blacken. You would think a fire had just hit in the crowns, and it didn't. Most cases, the trees do not survive, but that heavily depends on the amount of smoke, fire behavior, and tree size. I personally have seen landowners burn 20 acres of Cogongrass in a large 40-year-old longleaf stand and kill every single tree. To no fault of their own, they had no idea. They were just trying to do the best that they thought, and unfortunately, it got out of hand. So if you have to burn Cogongrass in a tree stand and you want to minimize your tree damage or death risk, you can mow the Cogongrass prior to burning, decreasing the flame height, and which will result in less smoke, decrease that thatch density. You can also use the weather to your advantage. Be aware of the wind. If your Cogongrass is tall and can't be mowed, I'd recommend a slow backing fire. If the grass is cut, a flanking fire would be sufficient. With this said, every property is different, and I always recommend having either a forester or a prescribed burner company do an on-site consultation. Cogongrass wildfire risk and intensity doesn't only impact our forests and agriculture fields, but also our urban areas. For example, here in Northwest Florida, we are grateful enough to have the Eglin Air Force Reservation, which spans over 360,000 acres, but borders many, many, many neighborhoods. While we all know plants have no boundaries and encroach across lands, there are many cases where there are Cogongrass infestation just on the other side of the fire break line, splitting the reservation and the private property. Eglin Reservation conducts thousands of acres of prescribed fire every year to help mitigate wildfire risk. However, Ambers can blow and spot fires happen. With the encroachment of Cogongrass into our urban interfaces, the risk of that happening increases substantially. Does dormant grass impose a higher risk than non-dormant? Anytime there is less water withheld inside a plant, the more flammable. So yes, dormant grass poses a larger threat to damaging trees and increasing wildfire risk to forests and urban areas. And next is just a video representing a little section of Cogongrass on fire. And I'd like you to pay attention to the flame height and the smoke coloration. And this is just a really small 10 by 13 square foot patch. So you can imagine if it was a really big area, the leaf blades are maybe 1.5 to 2 feet tall. So you're looking at, 4 or 5 foot flame height compared to the crawling flame height on just the St. Augustine grass and the longleaf needles. And you can see that the smoke color is turning very, very dark compared to the light gray. And that's allelopathic defense mechanism being released in that black smoke color. And that's Cogongrass in dormant season and a little bit of identification. This is my contact info. If you have more questions or concerns about Cogongrass, and treatment options and all that, feel free to contact me.
Thanks, Emma. I definitely learned something there. I didn't know that allelopathy was transferred to the smoke, so that's really surprising and challenging too.
Yes.
So next up, we have part 2 of the talk today from Chris Barnes. He's a forest health specialist with the Georgia Forestry Commission. He is going to, and Chris, if you want to start to queue up your presentation while I introduce you, he is going to kind of pick up with things in Georgia, a little bit on the status of Cogongrass over there, and what the agency is doing to help counteract its spread, and how it can really help some private landowners in Georgia who may start to see this on their property. So if you're all set, Chris, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Karen. Good afternoon, everyone. Like you said, my name is Chris Barnes with the Georgia Forestry Commission, one of the forest health specialists. And Emma did a real good job of giving us some good keys to identify Cogongrass. What I want to do is just kind of, some of it will be a little bit of rehash of some of the stuff that she had talked about, but kind of like give you the past of where we started out in Georgia and where we are now and how we have tried to combat, to get rid of the Cogongrass. Like she had mentioned in her slide, I'll go through this pretty quick because she's already talked about this. It is native to Southeast Asia, and it was introduced in 1911 there in Grand Bay, Alabama. It was used as seed packing material in orange crates. It was later planted, as she mentioned, as forage crop. And like I said, I think in the early stages, it was probably, they would eat it, but it was young and tender enough. But once it got older and got that high silica content, they say goats won't eat it. If a goat won't eat it, there's not too much that's going to eat anything. Looking at our sister states, looking at, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia decided we tried to keep it from going like it was there in the state. So we put together a Cogongrass task force was formed, and then we just started out a big campaign just to try to educate the public, to let them know what Cogongrass was and what to be looking for. At that point, this was up to 2006. This probably started in the early 1990s. All the work at that time was done by USDA APHIS. It was sprayed. They sprayed and monitored all the Cogongrass detections. Dr. Art Miller he's retired now with the USDA APHIS. He conducted most all those early Cogongrass treatments. And in July of 2006, there was, at that time, there was 54 known locations of Cogongrass in the state of Georgia, scattered across 10 counties. And those early Seminole, Decatur, Grady, Thomas, Mitchell, Worth, Clinch, Charlton, and Brantley County. And the first recorded spot was actually in Decatur County, and currently where the Walmart store is sitting there in Bainbridge. So this shows you just a kind of a quick graph. Once people started finding out what Cogongrass was, and we started getting the word out, then people started to contact us and let us know that, hey, we may have something over here as well. So the big thing was just trying to educate folks and let folks find out about it. The largest spot that we had in that first initial was the spot there in Charlton County. Like I say, it was about 9.25 acres. It had a power line right away, a road right away, and implanted pine. The Cogongrass was detected around each one of the big, large power poles that were being installed. So we felt like that's maybe where they came from or initiated from. We started treating those in 2006, and we finally did the final treatment on that 9 acres in 2021. So the main point to this is most of these Cogongrass spots that we find now are small. They're 10th acre to, at least for us in the state of Georgia, 10th acre to maybe 1/4 acre in size. And that's really where we want to try to get them, because when they're that small, we can usually knock them out within a year or 2 years and keep the spread from going any further. Once it gets established and it gets to a size, as big as this one, or even if it was bigger, like I say, it took us like 15 years before we finally got this one completely under control. So that's the main point. Just want to, the sooner the better. So that's why we try to educate folks and get the word out so that they can contact us to get in touch with someone before it gets to this stage. So in the first 2 years that the Georgia Forest Commission, like I say, up to 2006, USDA APHIS was doing it. GFC started, the Georgia Forest Commission started taking over. And in the first 2 years, we went from the 54 detections to 145 detections. And that went from 10 counties to 21 counties. And education and communication on the identification of Cogongrass was probably the primary reason for that dramatic increase in the detection, which had about 150 acres total as far as acre wise. Prior to 2007, USDA APHIS treated all the Cogongrass spots, and then the Georgia Forest Commission took the lead role in Cogongrass detection and eradication program in 2007. The Forest Service provided core funding for the program. In the last few years, APHIS has provided the funding to allow Georgia to continue detection and eradication efforts. In GFC, the Forest Commission still continues to be the leadership role in 2023. All of the potential Cogongrass spots should be reported to the local GFC county office or the GFC Forest Health staff, or anybody that works for the Forest Commission can be contacted. And we do a lot of this with our partners. Like I say, you got the Extension Office, DNR, DOT, Forest Service, APHIS, all those listed right there. They're all our partners. We can't do this alone, and it takes group effort to get it done. So where are we now? That's kind of where we came from. As to date, at the end of October of this year, we know that we have 1,936 locations of Cogongrass. And that's a lot. But if we have a success story with any of our invasive species, I feel like looking at all our invasive species that we have in the state of Georgia, this is one that we can probably say that we've done a really good job on as far as trying to control the spread of it. Out of those, if you look at the status of it up there, only about 12% or 225 of those spots are what we consider active growing spots. All the rest of those have been treated, and either year 1 or year 2 or year 3, which we consider eradicated. And how our process goes is we have a landowner that contacts us that says they have Cogongrass. We go out and we visit that site. If it is indeed Cogongrass, we'll treat that site to that landowner at no cost to the landowner. And then we'll go back for 3 consecutive years. And after that 3rd year, then we consider that site eradicated. Now, we don't just walk away from it. We'll still come back and do periodic checks just to make sure that nothing has been missed. And we encourage the landowners as well to continue to monitor that site just to make sure that some seed or something hadn't, a rhizome or something that got spread somewhere, 100 yards down through the wood line somewhere that we just hadn't picked up on. But like I say, that's where we are right now. Like I say, roughly about 88% of all the Cogongrass spots that we have in the state of Georgia have been controlled. So that's pretty good. This is just another way of looking at it. You can see as far as the active spots, they pretty much have all stayed the same from 2013 for the last 10 years, but we continue to grow our numbers as far as the number of sites that have been controlled. So we're staying ahead of it. As far as the top 10 Cogongrass counties in the state of Georgia, it's still going to be in that southwest corner where that original spot was found. Decatur County is my counterpart, Mark McClure. Some of y'all may know him. He spends probably 7 months out of the year doing nothing but Cogongrass eradication or more. He's in that southwest corner down there. And so that's where most of the spots are down there in that Decatur, Early, Seminole, Grady, Thomas County area down there. This right here, as Emma pointed out earlier, flowers. I've actually seen it. Like I say, depends on the weather. If it gets warm, sometimes I've seen it flower as early as February down in South Georgia, down where Mark's at. But usually, your typical March, April, May, on into June is when we're probably going to see some of the flowering, and that's probably when we get most of the detections or the call-ins or the people that recognize it. And that's also during our burn season. We do a lot of burning here in Georgia. And so, as Emma pointed out earlier, a lot of these guys will be out there doing a prescribed burn, and the fire will be backing and look real good. And all of a sudden, you'll just see this big puff of black smoke go up. And you go out there and you can see where the fire got hot. You flag that up, or just take a shovel and dig around. You can find those rhizomes, mark that area, and then we'll go back and spray that spot later on. But that's typically how we find or how most of those spots are found, is during the flowering or from a prescribed burn. And this is just another breakdown showing the different counties that, like I say, there's 76 counties now. Out of those, like I say, majority of those spots are less than a 10th acre in size. Very few of them none of them get over 10 acres in size. We don't have a spot any bigger than 10 acres, less than 10 acres. So most of our spots are, luckily for us, we catch them while they're small and able to control them. About 485, 490 acres is total in the state of Georgia that we know of. Over, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of education, a lot of outpour talks have been done. There's probably been over 1,000 programs by the Georgia Forest Commission personnel and the extension personnel, the University of Georgia, to different groups. Just anybody that would let us come talk. It's array of groups such as loggers at Master Timber Harvester Workshop, consultant foresters, Department of Natural Resources, Georgia Power Right of Ways, Georgia DOT, County Public Works, sportsmen's events, National Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited, anything that we could get in the door and hand out brochures and get the word out about Cogongrass. And that's really what I can't stress out enough. It's what got all this attention for folks to start calling in. Most of the reports that we get are in pine timber. And then the second is right of ways, whether that be power lines or road right of ways, open, and then yard. And then, as Emma alluded to, there is some that still, I've not seen it, but I think Mark has, where somebody has planted some. They just like the grass. But the reason why we try to do the education, it's just stuff, it always amazes me where you'll find this stuff pop up. The guy there in the middle is actually Philip Bailey. He's with the USDA APHIS, and his son was playing baseball, had to travel to the Newton County High School there. They just had done new work there at the baseball field, hauled in some field dirt, and he goes to show, see his son play baseball and looks up on the hill and there's Cogongrass. So, you never know where this stuff is going to pop up. So anyway, he contacted us and we got out there and treated that spot. Another spot, just like I say, you never know where it's going to pop up at. This is a spot in Atlanta. It's in a flower bed. I don't know if it could have come from the pine straw. It could have been that some of those nursery plants there, those potted plants, may have had some contamination with Cogongrass in them. No telling really how it got there. Another one here is just an old nursery, closed nursery site in Lee County, where there were scattered plots, planting pots with Cogongrass growing, which could have been an easy means for folks to have, moved Cogongrass into a new area. This, luckily, like I say, it was one that had closed down, and this one was treated, and it's been completely eradicated, so nothing I have to worry about, but it could have been bad. As I mentioned earlier, most of all the spots, like I said, those are just some of the weird ones that we look at, and we get some, just kind of like what she said, we've had some on some islands before. How it gets out on the island, I don't know. But majority of our Cogongrass spots that are reported to us are in just pine stands, just like this right here. 75%, a little over 75% of the Cogongrass spots are out in pine stands. The next biggest portion would probably be the right of ways, and this can be really tricky, and that's why we like working with DOT. It's easy to see the Cogongrass once it grows up, but it's really hard to see it if you don't get to it before they mow it. And we like to try to catch it before they mow it so they don't spread it any further. So that's why we reached out to them. We do a lot of early on. We did a lot of outreach with them, educating them on what to identify. They would contact us. They would mark spots, not mow through them. We go out and spray them. Makes it a lot easier to control that way. This is just a visual, so you kind of get a visual of what the state Georgia looks like as far as where most of the Cogongrass spots are. And like I said, most of it's going to be down here in this little southwest corner where it all originated from, coming into the state, and then up this, the Georgia, Alabama on the west side. And most of all of our Cogongrass spots are on the southwestern side of the state. This is just a map that kind of depicts the percentage of inactive Cogongrass spots. And so most of that, we try to keep, our goal is to try to keep all the counties of the Cogongrass in the 76 to 100% status. But due to the detections being made, monthly, this map's continually always changing. But for the most part, we do a pretty good job. We're, trying to keep it in that range. So what can you do to help? As Emma had talked about earlier, biggest thing is just learn how to identify Cogongrass. Spread the message, talk to your other outdoor enthusiasts, your neighboring landowners, just while you're out and about, even in the strangest place. Like I say, it could be, you may not even be in the woods. You may be in a neighborhood, or you may be in town, or, it could be, they actually had some at the University of Georgia. One of our spots was in a flower bed at the University of Georgia right there on campus. So just be mindful, when you're out and about, if you see something, if it kind of looks odd, it sticks out, doesn't look like it may not belong, check it out. If you see Cogongrass, you can always report it to any of the local GFC offices, or you can contact the GFC Forest Health staff. You can also go to our online website, and on that website, go under the Forest Health section, and there's a place that you can report it if you want to online. Like I say, you can contact anybody with the Forestry Commission. They'll get in touch with one of us, and we'll come out there and take a look at it. Like I tell people all the time, I'd rather have somebody call me and it be not Cogongrass and they thought it was Cogongrass than it be Cogongrass and them not report it. That's what we're here for. That's what we're, go take a look at it. That's my contact information right there. And like I say, that's what I have. So I guess from here we can turn it over to Karen and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And if you are a Georgia landowner, this Forest Health Program, Cogongrass Task Force is just a tremendous resource. Really encourage you to take part in that if you need the assistance. That's what it's there for. So thanks for showing just how effective that is. I know Emma there's kind of jealous of that map and all the white unshaded counties.
We're very fortunate in Georgia.
Yeah, well, and sitting here in South Carolina, we're fortunate for that too, that there's definitely a regional effect on that. So we do what we can.
That's right.
So Jacob, do we have some questions we want to throw at the panel?
Yeah, so we've got a few, and the first one, you probably saw this one coming. What are the best herbicides and the timing for application in order to treat Cogongrass? And that's open-ended. Either one of you can answer.
For us, it depends on the site. If it's a lot of times, if it's in what's there, if it's a site, most of our spots are small. So even if it's going to kill a couple of trees, a lot of times they're more willing to lose a couple of trees if they can get rid of the Cogongrass. So a lot of times we use a Mazapir, use it like a 1% rate, 2%, 1.5% rate, mixing with glyphosate as well, doing a combination of those two at probably like a 4%. And that works really well. But sometimes, depending on the situation, we have had Cogongrass would be up underneath, some live oaks or something like that. And of course, in there you can't use the imazapyr. You got to just go straight with like a Roundup glyphosate type thing. It doesn't work. It does work, but a lot of times it takes multiple treatments if you don't use the imazapyr. Is what we found.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, peak treatment times are just after it flowered and right before dormant season, so late spring and early fall. You can treat any time as long as it's not too cold and not too hot. So if it's above freezing, and then heat wise, so like I deal with that a lot here in Florida. Cogongrass does shut down after the leaf blade has reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll actually see it fold down that offset mid-rib vein. Once it's folded, it's shut down and will not carry that herbicide. I will say that it's very important to have the proper surfactants and adjuvants in your mix. Like we like to use LI 700 with ours, which really helps with sticking and spreading the herbicide droplets, and then using blue dye as well so that you can actually physically see where you're spraying. If you miss one little piece of rhizome, that Cogongrass is just going to get mad and come back even stronger. So we use 1% imazapyr rate. Typically I don't mix my imazapyr and glyphosate just because I have a lot of variety of size, but as Chris was saying, it really just depends on if you have desired vegetation or not, or what your land management desires are.
So I guess the next question would be, for Emma, one second, I had it pulled up. So from a private landowner's perspective, if you don't have Georgia Forestry Commission there to come out and treat it from beginning to end, or the Longleaf Alliance in Southern Alabama, and I'm a private landowner, are there physical traits after the private landowner has sprayed the Cogongrass that I should look for to know that I've got effective kill on that plant?
Yeah, so you'll start seeing signs of necrosis depending on which herbicide you see 3 to 2 months post spraying. If you use glyphosate, so Roundup is a common brand name, you'll start seeing it to have tip brown back. So it'll start at the tips and then slowly brown down. And it'll be like a really light gray shade brown. And you'll start seeing that at 3 weeks. Sometimes I've seen it as early as 1. That was mostly because it was really hot though, so it was already in a damaged state. Imazapyr, it can take anywhere between 1 and 3 months to start seeing necrosis signs. But once it's completely gone into that brown stage, you'd want to dig up those rhizomes, and if they're mushy, then you've gotten a really good successful eradication. But that's not to say that there's 1 little inch of rhizome further down that has survived. So it's important to continue monitoring even after you think you've eradicated. So many times we're doing these treatments in 5-year spans, 3 years of treatment twice a year, and then 2 years of monitoring for anything coming back.
Had myself muted. So in areas, I guess maybe not in Georgia so much, so maybe Emma, this is for you too. When Cogongrass is so prevalent where you are, or if you're, what's the approach for treating it when you're just walled in by Cogongrass all around? Is eradication even a possibility?
So if you're a private landowner and you're surrounded by Cogongrass and it's encroaching onto your land, become friendly with your neighbors. If it's county lands, go to your commission board meetings, make the public aware of the issue. is not to say that it's a lost cause of eradicating it on your property, because Cogongrass, as nitpicky as it is, it'll take an opportunity, but if you start building a resistance on it to grow onto your property, it'll backtrack and go back towards the property where it's encouraging the growth. So you can keep it off your property, but it's going to be a yearly maintenance thing, and I would say it would be a control status, not an eradication status.
My mute button. Griff, we'll toss this one to you first, and Emma, if you have anything to add on. Are there any best management practices for landowners or even state properties anywhere that has the possibility of Cogongrass moving in, cleaning equipment, or maybe even adding something into a contract for your loggers or whatever timber harvest equipment that you have moving onto the property? Are there any kind of safety nets there?
I'm not really sure. Like I say, Mark could probably answer that question better. I know if I was on that side of the state, I kind of work mainly the east side. So, but if I knew a logger or there was somebody moving equipment from that side of the state, I would want to make sure that they cleaned that equipment really well before they moved it over there. Because they could easily accidentally just have a rhizome stuck on the bottom of a planter or something, and then that start a whole new spot. It's not, I don't know that there's any, I know that that's done as far as like, if you go to like a wildfire, they do stage and make sure you clean your equipment before you leave from one site to the other so that you don't spread stuff like that. Hopefully they're doing the same, but I don't know because I hadn't, I'm not experienced that. So I don't know. Emma, you could answer that better than I could.
Yeah. I know a lot of timber companies are becoming more and more well educated and in identifying Cogongrass because they're being held more and more liable for spreading it. And that's mostly because private landowners are requiring in their contract that if they find a new invasive on their property, that company is held liable, and they have to either pay for the eradication or pay for the herbicide or some kind of deal that the private landowner can work out with that company. As far as like state agencies and stuff like that, they're always told and encouraged to clean their equipment prior to leaving any site. So for instance, I work with the Navy, 2 Navy bases here in the Panhandle, and there's a lot of contractors, a lot of mowing companies out here that will just run straight over Cogongrass and move on to the next field, but they're still required to stop, blow the equipment off, and then move on. Now, is that to say that the person working actually does that? That's a little hard to, delegate and hold people to a high standard on that. But it's definitely always written in contracts, and it's always encouraged. And I always tell any private landowner I come across, if you have any kind of contract, haying, straw, timber, even if you're getting fill dirt, make sure in the contract it has something about invasive species. That way you are covered, because there's no telling where it can come from. It only takes 1 inch of rhizome for it to spread, and it can survive 3 weeks without sunlight or water. So I would just, if you're going into any kind of contract stuff like that, just put it in there.
And I guess the last question that I have here are there, Georgia's got it pretty well locked down as far as, if you report it, they'll eradicate it. But are there any other cost share opportunities out there that might be available for private landowners that are looking to kind of take on some of that financial burden to help them eradicate Cogongrass?
Yeah, so there's always the EQIP program that's offered in multiple states. It's through NRCS, it's through the government. It's a big program. It's a bit of a process to apply for, but it's worth your while because you will have a contractor come and handle it for a few years until it's eradicated. Treating Cogongrass can be pricey, and a lot of organizations acknowledge that. Like for instance, we do have a program where I work across 8 counties, treating 1 acre for free. And then Alabama has a bunch of different programs. Their biggest one is the Alabama Cogongrass program, and that always opens every Valentine's Day each year, and they allow up to 200 private landowners to apply. That's it. It's pretty much as long as you're not right on the water, you're gonna get in. And then there's also private companies that you can hire, but that's where the prices will start getting pretty high. I would recommend looking into your extension office in your local area and see if they have any kind of program in the area that does Cogongrass eradication or treatments.
Well, thank y'all. I guess I'll wrap up quick Q&A there and toss it back to you, Karen.
All right, thanks. Some good questions. And if we didn't get to yours, I definitely encourage you to reach out to our presenters after the fact, back on the webinar page. And if you have any issues with Cogan down the road, hopefully you can reach back out to, and we can offer you some point you in the right direction for assistance there too. So in closing, I just wanted to thank Emma and Chris again for sharing this information. Some really good info to keep in mind at all times of year, especially in planning ahead where Cogongrass is concerned. Hope that kind of came through, that's important to keep top of mind if you have that on your property. And I wanted to thank the Wade Research Foundation for sponsoring today's talk. The Longleaf Alliance will be holding another webinar on December 19th. That will feature Joan Walker as the presenter and discussing selecting seed sources for ground cover restoration. That will take place right here on the Forestry webinar portal too, so you can keep an eye out for that announcement when it's posted, or sign up for the Longleaf Alliance's monthly newsletter to be kept up to date on all kinds of events, virtual and in person. Thank you again for joining today. If you're seeking continuing education credits today, just please keep your browser open. I believe it keeps a second window open to complete that step 2 to enter in your license number and complete that process. So until next time, take care, everyone. Thanks.